Thank you for joining us today. In the meantime, we could have a roll call twist. So could we introduce ourselves in the chat by giving us your name and what African product that you are proud of?
Et quels sont les produits africains qui vous rendent fiers? Et pour ceux d'entre nous qui sont d'expression francophone, le présentateur a commencé, Madame Sarah Mombi a commencé à nous accueillir à ce pré-sommet et elle nous a donné un plan pour permettre aux autres participants de se connecter. Et pendant que nous serions en train d'attendre, elle nous demande de nous présenter dans le chat que nous puissions donner nos noms, les pays à partir desquels nous nous connectons et d'essayer de mentionner quelques produits africains qui nous rendent fiers et qui font notre fierté. Voilà un peu. Merci.
So keep dropping countries where you've logged in from, and what is that one product proud of?
Et quel est ce produit africain pour lequel vous êtes venu? chats.
So from the chat room, I can see
Depuis là, je peux voir
Ghana,
Ghana,
DRC Congo,
République démocratique du
South
Congo,
Africa,
Afrique du
Egypt.
Sud, Égypte.
You're most welcome.
Vous êtes
So,
la bienvenue.
one word that
Encore une
would
parole.
describe ownership to you. What does ownership mean to you?
Que peut dire la propriété pour vous?
Just one word.
Juste en un mot.
What does ownership mean to you? Just one word.
Juste en un mot, que veut dire la propriété pour vous? Quelque chose. Moi, je suis dans le bureau.
So, once again, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you're joining us from. On behalf of the All Africa Intellectual Property Summit and our conveners, the AFTA Secretariat, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to this high-level pre-summit dialogue themed Africa is creating, trading, and innovating. Is Africa owning the value? My name is Sarah Mumbi Bisamunyu. I have the privilege to serve as the lead moderator this evening for today's dialogue. It's an honor to facilitate this important continental conversation alongside an exceptional team dedicated to ensuring an engaging and inclusive experience for all participants. Joining me today is my esteemed co-moderator, Miss Mali, Miss Mali Mudamulu, and Dr. Aji George, whose expertise will enable delegates from both Anglophone and Francophone communities to participate in today's dialogue. Without further ado,
Hey, hello everyone. It appears, hello Sarah.
Hello, Sarah.
All right, it appears that my colleague may have some technical difficulties, so I would step in as her
Ma collègue a
co-moderator.
quelques difficultés techniques et je vais donc entrer en tant que modérateur.
All right, so for today's webinar is currently live streamed and is simultaneously interpreted in English and French, as we have seen.
D'aujourd'hui est simultanément interprété en anglais et c'est en live.
So if you would like to listen in French or English, click three horizontal dots on your Microsoft Teams toolbar, select language and speech, choose interpretation, and then select either English or French as your preferred language.
Si vous voulez joindre à partir d'un langage, vous allez sur les points et puis ça vous sélectionnez votre langage de destination et selon la langue que vous préférez.
Right. So I can see that the moderator is back in session, and so I will hand it back to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Mali. Sorry about that.
Désolée.
We are and excited. Day has finally come. Distinguished partners, participants, Africa.
De l'Afrique.
Today, we are in one space as Africa to discuss our issues pertaining intellectual property. Africa's story has never been.
L'histoire de l'Afrique n'a jamais été.
Africa's story has never been one of scarcity of ideas.
Une histoire de rareté des idées.
It's a story of scale intra-African trade reached out at an estimated US $220 billion US by 2024 alone. It's a story of a scale intra-African trade
du marché interafricain
that has reached an estimated
une estimation
200 billion US dollars
de 200 milliards de dollars
in 2024
en 2024
alone.
À lui seul.
This February, the African Union adopted the 8 annexes of the AFTA Protocol on Intellectual Rights.
Ce mois de février, il a été adopté le protocole pour l'accès à la zone de libre-échange.
Extending the framework that already covers patents, trademarks, geographical indications, traditional knowledge, and generic resources.
Étendant tous les domaines qui ont déjà couvert les brevets, les marques, les indications géographiques, les savoirs traditionnels.
As AFTA's own Secretary General has said, this protocol is not merely a legal instrument, it is a strategic tool for industrialization.
Comme le secrétariat de la ZLECAf l'a déjà dit, ce n'est pas juste un simple instrument, c'est un actif pour l'industrialisation.
It's one designed to help the continent capture more of its value from what it already creates.
Pour permettre à l'Afrique de saisir plus de ses valeurs de ce qu'elle est déjà en train de créer.
Therefore, participants and gentlemen,
mesdames et messieurs,
this is why today's dialogue matters and why your participation matters.
C'est pourquoi le dialogue de ce jour compte et pourquoi votre participation compte également.
Let's move beyond celebrating what Africa creates.
allons au-delà de ce que célébrer ce que l'Afrique crée,
to examining and honestly how Africa keeps what it creates.
à examiner honnêtement comment l'Afrique conserve ce qu'elle crée.
Therefore, it is of a great honor
Ainsi, c'est notre
to,
grand honneur
to have this powerful keynote address from the office secretariat
d'avoir ces messages de salutation du secrétariat de la ZELECA,
the co-convener of the All Africa Intellectual
le présentateur principal du sommet All Africa, All IP, pardon, All IP Summit.
I will now invite my co-moderator to read the keynote speaker's biography. Over to you, Ms. Mali.
Okay, hello everyone. So it is my honor to introduce Mr. Desiree Lomo.
Bonsoir à tous, c'est mon honneur pour moi de présenter M. Désiré Lomou.
Right, so Mr. Lomo is a distinguished international intellectual property and trade lawyer with extensive experience in the multilateral trading system and Africa's regional integration agenda of his career. He has advised and negotiated on complex policy issues with leading international and regional institutions, including the African Union, WIPO, WTO, UNCTAD, UNECA, UNIDO, WHO, OWAPI, ECCAS, and CEMAC, as well as national governments and private sector stakeholders. He currently serves as the head of Intellectual Property Rights Division at the AFCFTA Secretariat, Ghana, where he leads efforts to operationalize the AFCFTA International Property Rights Protocol and develop a harmonized continental intellectual property ecosystem. His work is central to advancing innovation, creativity, technology transfer, and the protection and commercialization of intellectual property as key drivers of intra-African trade, industrialization, and economic transformation. So it is now my great pleasure to invite Mr. Desiree Lomu, head of the Intellectual Property Rights Division at the AFCFTA Secretariat, Ghana, as he delivers the keynote address on building an African ownership economy, intellectual property as a driver of competitiveness. Mr. Lomu, you may now take the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, honorable guests, distinguished colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to start by extending my appreciations to my partner, co-organizers, and privilege to share this platform to discuss the advancement of the continental integration agenda from an intellectual property perspective. Before moving on, further allow me to extend to all the warm greetings from His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AFCFTA. I'm especially pleased to stand before you in the current context, where Africa is increasingly recognizing intellectual property, not an incidental matter, but a central instrument of economic transformation. Indeed, with the memorable milestone considered by the adoption of the AFCFTA Protocol on Intellectual Property Rights and 8 of its 9 annexes by the 36 and 39 African Union Assemblies, Africa has managed to equip itself with the first effective African continental IP framework. This is to address existing gaps, creating a fragmented continental IP and hampering the ownership, the prosperity, and the competitiveness of African economies. The AFCFTA Protocol on Intellectual Property Rights makes that direction very clear by seeking to establish harmonized rules and principles for the promotion, protection, cooperation, enforcement, and commercialization of intellectual property rights in support of the objective of the AFCFTA. The theme for today, building an African ownership economy, intellectual property as a driver of competitiveness, is therefore timely because Africa's developmental challenge is no longer simply to produce, Africa to own more, control and capture more of the value created by African people, African firms, African institutions, and African culture. Ladies and gentlemen, for many decades, Africa's place in the global economy has been shaped by a familiar pattern of exporting raw materials, import finished goods. The usual narrative always reminds us that Africa's export trade relies heavily on raw materials and commodities, accounting for over 60 to 80% of the continent's total export value. Too often, the value created from African-owned ideas and creativity. That model is no longer sufficient. In today's economy, value is increasingly created by knowledge, brand, design, data, software, innovation, and creative content. The U.S. National Science Foundation reported that in 2022, knowledge and technology-intensive industry make up a major portion of the global economy, accounting for $11.4 trillion in global manufacturing export alone. This means the country and companies that are those that can convert ideas into protected, tradable, and scalable assets. That is why intellectual property matters. The concept of an ownership economy captures this shift very well. Indeed, an ownership economy is not just one in which people are busy and productive. It is one in which Africans own the intellectual asset that drives income, investment, bargaining power, and long-term prosperity. If Africa is serious about structural transformation, then Africa must be serious about the legal and institutional frameworks that allow African creators, innovators, businesses, and researchers to own the value they generate. Intellectual property is often misunderstood as pure legal discipline concerned only with registration, enforcement, and litigation. In truth, it is much more than that. It's an economic system for transforming creativity and innovation into value. It does this in several ways. IP creates exclusivity. A patent can protect an invention, a trademark can protect a brand, a copyright can protect artistic and literary works, an industrial design can protect the appearance of a product, and a trade secret can protect confidential business information. Such protection opens up the exclusivity that gives the right holder the ability to commercialize the asset, negotiate licensing terms, attract investors, and enter markets with great confidence. Second, IP creates trust. Investors are more likely to finance and develop businesses when and where their assets are legally protected, regardless of the various incentives. The various investment incentive African investment laws tend to offer to attract investment while maintaining a fragile IP framework. Partners are more willing to collaborate when ownership is clear. Buyers are more likely to purchase when quality and origin are identified. In this way, IP becomes part of the infrastructure of modern commerce, and it creates a direct link between the knowledge and the market. Third, IP creates skills. A protected IP transcends borders. IP transcends the various segments of a same production chain by linking various businesses operating in different sectors under the same IP regime to build a solid value chain. It allows right holders to commercialize and exploit their product or services in multiple markets, generate revenue while enjoying protection. This is particularly important for Africa, where regional integration under the AFCFTA opens the possibility of moving from fragmented national markets to a larger single continental marketplace based on the interaction between the AFCFTA trade regime and the AFCFTA IP regime. Africa is rich in talent, creativity, culture, science potential. Indeed, Africa's creative economies is valued roughly of 60 billion US dollars and hold the potential $200 billion by 2030, driven intra-African trade creation and economic diversification. African musicians, designers, inventors, filmmakers, software designers, researchers, and art. However, this value is underutilized or misutilized. Another song is streamed everywhere in the 55 guys nowhere or but rather elsewhere. A design is copied before it is commercialized, creating huge loss of revenue to the designers or the communities of origin. A research result remains in a laboratory. The brand becomes popular, but it's not protected across borders because of the fragmented landscape. This is not merely a problem of enforcement. It is also a problem of strategy. Economies continue to emphasize harmonious and harmonious using context tools and systems. They can begin to move up to the value chain. That is competitiveness in the 21st century. The AFCFTA gives Africa a historic opportunity to change this trajectory by lowering all categories of cross-border barriers and bringing together African markets. The AFCFTA provides a continental through which African businesses go beyond their domestic borders and supply approximately 1.3 billion consumers. But market integration alone does not guarantee value capture. We also need intellectual property that can support that integration by innovation, harmonizing operation, as well as collapsing discrepancies in IP laws and system across jurisdictions. The AFCFTA protocol on intellectual property is highly significant. Its objective is not only harmonization, it's also economic enablement. It is intended to support intra-Africa trade, promote African innovation and deepen intellectual property culture, foster coherent policy. In practical terms, this building an environment in which African businesses can confidentially expand, license, export, and compete across borders without losing control of the assets. Africa is moving towards boost inter-Africa trade and change on the narrative of its own economic success. The AFCFTA protocol on IPR, in combination with the existing national and regional IP system, provide to the continent a potential framework to shift from a simpler IP consumer to an identified IP producer. This is especially important for small and medium-sized enterprises, which often possess the most creative potential, but less legal and financial capacity rights. For them, a functioning IP the difference between survival and growth, between local obscurity and regional relevance. Competitiveness is not just about the it is about attentiveness, ability, and quality. Product competes not only because it is cheaper or affordable, but because it is trusted, well designed, well branded. Intellectual strengthen each of those qualities. Patents encourage technological problem solving. Trademark help businesses build recognition and reputation. Copyrights support the creative industry, which among the most dynamic African. Industrial design makes products more diverse. Geographical indication power agriculture and cultural products. Africa possesses agriculture
médiation, arbitrage et droit de la mode délivrés par les institutions de renommée mondiale telles que l'Académie de l'OMPI et la faculté de droit de l'Université de Fordham. Accueillons maintenant Madame Lise, s'il vous plaît.
All right. Thank you so much to the organizers for this amazing event. I think this is a very timely conversation. Now, I just need to be guided in terms of the translation, because I think my plan is I'll project my presentation and try and speak slowly so that then we can have that simultaneous sort of translation, if that is okay.
It's okay.
All right. So Miss Liz, so what is going to happen is that you'll take your presentation, and then after that, the French speaker Michelle would then give sort of like a synopsis of what has been presented. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So like I said earlier, this is a very timely conversation, and my reflections are both in a lawyer perspective, as well as a lover of African products. And this conversation around Made in Africa, Owned by Africa, why it's really important is, as our guest speaker highlighted, is that we are stuck in the provision. So just to share some, just to put some perspective in some of the data that is roaming around the internet. The FCFTA creates the market, and IP determines who owns the upside of the continental conversation. We have seen, or we can see, that about 1.3 billion people are connected by the AFCFTA at the continental level. We're talking about 55 countries within the free trade area. We are talking of about $3.4 trillion combined GDP potential, and we're looking at 2.5% of Africa's 2023 share of global merchandise export. The legal opportunity is continental, as we can see, and the use of the AFCFTA IP protocol as envisioned protocols, rules of origin, collective marks, and regional enforcement to make African brands travel with African goods. Now, this is just a context, and I would like to highlight the challenges we are facing, or where we are as Africans, as African nations, with a lot of reflection in Kenya in terms of how we're doing things. And in my assessment, I have observed that we are similar on the same page in terms of how we are handling this. And according to our keynote speaker, as you heard, we are mostly known for the African raw input, and then it proceeds to a local manufacturer. Sometimes it goes abroad as a raw material. At the local manufacturer level, for example, here in Kenya, we have the export processing zones, the EPZ. And from a policy and legislative perspective, we have seen that there is no mention of local content. How do they create manufacture for local brands has always been a question mark. So you find that even these EPZs are happy and ready to work with international exporters as opposed to working with local brands. So that already can show a problem. In Kenya, we do not have the legislative infrastructure that compels some of these EPZs to promote or to build or manufacture for locals. And thereafter, it is labeled by a foreign entity. So by labeling, we're talking about them trademarking or registering trademarks to these products, and then proceeds to foreign retail. And of course, the goodwill is amassed abroad and not locally. So as you can see, value leakage appears when origin, authorship, and ownership disappear between factory floor and the final consumer. The result is structurally familiar. Africa gets wages and production margin. Another jurisdiction gets the trademark, consumer data, pricing power, licensing opportunity, and long-term brand equity. So the point is not to ban contract manufacturing, but the point is to prevent anonymity. And I'll talk about shortly in terms of my reflections in Kenya. Again, our guest speaker, our keynote speaker, highlighted very many important issues when it comes to intellectual property and export. The use of trademarks, the use of industrial designs, copyright, the use of GIs and collective marks, and the use of trade secrets and contracts as infrastructure to protect and commercialize African products. Now, giving this example that I just shared from the floor to factory floor to the consumer, when we look at most of our African legislative infrastructure in regards to exporting, most of our countries, and I speak from a Kenyan perspective, our legislative efforts and policies do not speak on how origin is attributed. So, of course, the issue of trademarks becomes an issue. And also in terms of just understanding of intellectual property rights is lacking, and it's lacking on so many dimensions, not only from the rights holders dimension, but in my view and in my analysis, I think we need to embrace having more technocrats in various departments, especially when we're talking about trade and we're talking about intellectual property. So in these respective offices and government ministries, I think that is where we really need to start, because when we have the right technocrats in place, then we are able to talk about the right legislative and policy mechanism, and we're able to talk about the synchronization of local legislation and policies with the regional policies that we envision. So I think having technocrats becomes really important. Now, when we're looking at local production and how it can be paired or must be paired with local ownership, when you look at the structure in terms of the cycle from design to enforcement, at a design stage, it means that the African creative knows about intellectual property, and also highlighted some of these regimes that would be considered and that understanding. And of course, as my previous slide, you can also see why contracts become important, because from design to manufacture, once I understand, or once a creative understands the intellectual property rights, then they're able to have the right contracts at the manufacture level. At this manufacture level, we need policy in terms of, one, what does local production or local content look like? It's something that must be in legislation, because otherwise, if it's only a profit-making game, you will find that those who are equipped in the manufacturing space would rather work with people or organizations that would pay, and most of the time they tend to be foreigners. So that becomes really important in regards to that. Secondly, in my view, the cost of doing business in most African countries can be very painful. With some of the clients that I have advised, you find that some of them may survive short term, and some are able to only survive if they manufacture abroad, especially China, because of how affordable or cheaper the labor there must be and the cost of production. So I think we really need to answer the question of local production and how it can be made affordable, because the more affordable it is made, the more to encourage our creatives and our innovators and our local designers and regional designers to manufacture locally. And of course, when you manufacture locally, we are able to also have that appreciation of these brands that are created locally, that we're able to be very patriotic or Pan-Africanist about the things that we create. Because if you manufacture, or when you manufacture at a local level, or at a region where a space is, within your influence, it's easy to sing the song of your brand, to tell your story, and everyone can associate with it because that is where we are creating from, or you're creating from. Again, when we create and manufacture, we are able to create our own standards because we understand what we are manufacturing, and we're able to appreciate and brand our products accordingly. And of course, subsequently with standards comes branding, because a story is being told between standards and branding. And then of course, the distribution and enforcement. When we have a strong local product in terms of intellectual property protection, then it is much easier to understand what that distribution would look like at an international or a global level or a regional level, because you're able to tell your story as an African brand and as a brand from your respective country. So industrial policy should not stop at factories. It should create design capacity, protect know-how, fund brand development, and help farms register and enforce rights in destination markets. And again, speaking to the issue of registration and enforcement, I think it's time that we start thinking outside the box in terms of some of these pragmatic solutions that we can offer our local artisans, producers, designers, creatives in general. How do we prepare them for exports? How do we prepare them to be able to transfer this goodwill from a local level to an international level, to carry the identity from a local level to an international level? And of course, as an IP practitioner, seeing that most of our African staff are able to go to that next level without support, because that means in terms of registering brands territorially, the trademarks in the countries of interest, there's always a financial implication, and sometimes might be a little heavy to shoulder. So again, what kind of infrastructure can we have in terms of collaborations that also ensure that we keep our intellectual property, we are able to identify our IP, and at the same time, we're able to collaborate in a fair manner, and we get that recognition. And I would like just share some examples in terms of some of the brands I have interacted and some of the raw materials that I've interacted with, and I struggle to find who or what are these African brands. So I will start with someone who loves chocolate. Ghana is known for producing some very good chocolate. I have friends in Ghana who tell me about how the cost of production and even just the cost of purchasing or accessing the local material, which is the cocoa, is very stringent. It's tough. So that makes even the production of chocolate at a local level very expensive. The locals are barely buying it because it's very expensive. And of course, that continental level, then the access to these chocolates for us is harder, because I cannot mention any brand I know of chocolate from Ghana at the top of my mind. But yet, I can mention some of these other non-African brands. So that means there is a really big problem. And I would be happy to sing that I take X brand of chocolate that is produced in Ghana. So that's one example. Another example, here in Kenya, from the coastal region where I'm from, we are known for producing sisal. And now, unfortunately, the efforts that have been in place or people have tried to have some efforts in place where we can locally sort of value add or add value to the sisal when it is processed here, have really been interfered with. And I think I would say one of those issues has always been, unfortunately, a lack of proper legislative and policy mechanisms in terms of how we protect also foreign investors who have that ability to bring such infrastructure here. So we see that that becomes really a big problem. And unfortunately, the truth is corruption plays a really big deal. So now we are finding situations where now this sisal will be harvested from Kenya, transported to Italy, one of the countries that exports our sisal. They create this very beautiful furniture, and then it's sold back to us at an arm and a leg. So that is a problem. We are missing out on even the ownership. It's only a few of us who are from this region who actually know who are some of these companies that are using our sisal from the coastal region to produce this furniture that is then sold back to us. When you look at just the question around tea and coffee, I think at an international level, you'll hear people just say, we know Kenyans for tea, we know Ethiopians for coffee, but nobody is talking about the brands around that. So again, are we sustainable? And yet intellectual property is supposed to be that tool, as it was said, for democratizing economic opportunity. So how are we using this IP to assist in terms of creating that local ownership? That just is a demonstration of and a reflection of what I am observing in the continent. Then as far as we talk about at the factory level, we have what is called the private labeling or the white labeling, which is lawful, but it must not erase African value. So we find that with this strategy, it conceals origin. So there is no visible link to African production. And by visible link, just the simple attribution, made in Kenya, made in Kericho, made in Accra, or made in Ghana. We find that some of that is missing, especially in Kenya. We have seen that in terms of our exports, that is an issue. Then there is silent IP transfer. Nobody's talking about this IP transfer. So the patterns, the samples and modifications drift or transfer to the buyer silently. No, nothing happening, just total silence. And again, maybe because lack of understanding of intellectual property. So our people are stuck in the buying and selling as opposed to ownership. Then of course, the issue of trademark sporting. Distributor or buyer registers a local brand abroad because our local brand or artisan has no access to abroad, to international markets. So how do we bridge this gap, as I earlier talked about? It is something that we really need to think about. Lack of consumer data. As Africans, we are the producers, but cannot build direct market knowledge because we are not the ones directly distributing. So again, that contributes to our inefficiency pie, and we need to figure that out. So the rule is, in my view, we allow private labeling, but require written IP origin attribution and address issues of excess stock, what happens to such stock, and the issues of confidentiality and dispute clauses. And again, I think where we embrace efficient dispute resolution mechanisms in terms of intellectual property, then we boost also compliance when we are talking about ownership and not talking about enforcement. And by efficient dispute mechanism, it means we are faster, we are affordable, and we're expedient. We are not stuck in court with disputes relating to IP in years. We're talking about IP having the shelf life of a banana. So it will only benefit from expedient and quick solution, which means we're talking about anything from 30 days to a maximum of 120 days to resolving a dispute around intellectual property and trade, so that then things move faster. So again, in my reflections, we recently have had a bill tabled in Parliament for public participation, the Export Promotion Bill. And some of what I have said is a reflection of what I observed in what we are doing right and what we need to finesse and do better. So what is working for us with this bill, and I assume that with a lot of countries, that's where we are. There's a single authority where there's less fragmentation across investment, export promotion, and national branding. However, this single authority could be strengthened to ensure that it has mechanisms that can make it more efficient and more friendly. So that when we're talking about boosting ownership, are we exploring the ideas of having an IP desk so that that local artisan who lives in the rural areas would have a source to even educate them around some of the things they need to have at the back of their mind as they would like to export. What do they need to have in place at that level? Again, speaking to the issue of technocrats having to understand intellectual property, the right advice. In such a situation, we're talking about community marks, then that means they are able to advise the certain community or group of people on how then together they can collectively brand their tea, for example, for exportation. And then in that regard, as they assist in the exporting process, the ownership is asserted from a national center, the centralized government services, then the nation brand mandate, a vehicle for authentic, credible, and unique country identity, as I also mentioned. They're a source of product adaptation for sizing, labels, and packaging and quality, which is again a conversation that when we're talking about ownership and exporting, we always we need to have standards. What does that mean for also the kind of products that we manufacture locally? Because sometimes we are known for our handcraft and our traditional know-how or traditional cultural expressions. How do we standardize that? So it's also a conversation that we need to have so that when we're exporting some of our products, also the nuances of our products is well understood and our story is well told. They offer an exporter database and can support traceability, verification, and also market intelligence. What is selling where?
Liz,
So,
Liz, I'm sorry, you have
all right. Yeah, it will be done by then.
you.
So all in all, the foundation of IP is the spine, and we're talking about origin identification, brand ownership, creator attribution, and international protection. I think that is the meat of what we're trying to say, so that then we can own, we can protect, and we can tell our stories, and we can be sustainable in the intellectual property game, as far as ownership, production, and scaling. So as long as we are able to utilize intellectual, as long as we are able to also, and we have the right people in the food chain to adequately advise our producers, our artisans, our creatives, then we can deal with the issue of ownership. Because as long as our artisans do not understand these issues, these IP issues, the use of trademarks, the use of industrial designs, the use of copyright. Again, in some of our countries, we do not have geographical indications, legislations, and yet they are helpful, at least in my analysis. As I mentioned also, the issue of how to use collective marks and how the communities can self-regulate. How do they register, how they self-regulate? I think that is always another issue that is really wanting, and we need to speak more so that then we can organize our communities better, and then these collective marks can be utilized better. So I think in conclusion, with the right education and the right technocrats and policies and legislation that are very explicit in terms of labeling, it must be labeled, it must move from one country to another, carrying the brands that have been created in their countries of origin, then I think we will do better in terms of ownership, we will do better in terms of telling our stories, and we'll do better in terms of confirming and asserting the origin of our products. So thank you very much. I shall conclude my comments here.
Thank you so much, Liz. To the participants through the chat, can you please give Liz a thumbs up, flowers? Thank you very much, Liz, for that insightful and well-thought presentation. What comes in my mind actually is about the Masai shuka that is worn or has been worn for a couple of years on international runways for years, and often it has gone without license or a single shilling given back to the community. So this shows that protection exists only in law, but it's not in practice, and it protects no one. I like what you said, that there's one profound statement that you made, that the frameworks do not speak loud enough on how origin is attributed. And for me, that is a takeaway. Africa is known for a lot of raw materials, and most of the raw materials are taken. You gave a good example of the Ghana chocolate, the coffee. We are known for coffee, we're known for tea, we're known for chocolates. But at the end of the day, do we have value for these raw materials, for these products? Thank you so much. Distinguished delegates, if that presentation sparked any thoughts or questions, please continue to post in the chat. We are collecting your questions for an interactive panel discussion later in the program. And now we move on to our second presentation. I invite my colleague to kindly introduce our next speaker. Over to you, Mali.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. I kindly ask again that we allow our French speaker, Michelle, to take us through Mrs. Liz Lendo's presentation, and then we move on to the next presentation. Thank you.
Merci. De ce que nous pouvons retenir de la présentation qui vient d'être dispensée, j'espère qu'on m'entend. Are you getting me, please? I hope I did not check
Yes.
my mic. Okay.
Yes, Michelle, we can get you.
La présentatrice a bien fait de dire que sa présentation était axée sur son point de vue à partir de ses compétences, de son statut, et elle est partie d'un postulat qu'elle a tiré également du présentateur qui était du précédent présentateur. Elle a observé, elle a confirmé que l'Afrique effectivement n'exporte pas, a confirmé que l'Afrique exporte effectivement les produits, la matière brute. Et elle est allée en nous présentant des chiffres qui étaient très intéressants, qui montraient combien de fois il y avait des produits bruts qui étaient importés et qui apportaient et pourtant qui représentaient de la valeur pour le continent. Et elle a élaboré, elle a présenté les difficultés qui sont rencontrées et elle a constaté qu'il y avait un usage extensif des marques, des secrets, des droits d'auteur, des dessins modèles, de droits d'auteur, et elle a noté qu'il fallait protéger ces actifs-là afin de les commercialiser, surtout dans le contexte de zone de libre-échange dans lequel nous sommes en train d'évoluer. Et revenant sur le point de vue de l'exportation, elle a décelé le fait qu'il y a un problème d'identification de l'origine, de la paternité des produits qui sont exportés, et alors que ce sont les produits locaux qui méritent d'être valorisés. Donc, observant dans la production locale qui est couplée avec la propriété intellectuelle qui devrait aussi être locale, propre aux Africains, elle a tiré sonnette d'alarme sur la nécessité d'utiliser des contrats, parce que lorsque les produits sont créés et qu'ils sont maintenant commercialisés, il y a nécessité de passer par des contrats, et ces contrats permettent maintenant d'entrer en échange avec le monde extérieur. Donc, et pour cela, il va falloir qu'il y ait des véritables politiques et des véritables législations qui permettent de s'approprier et légiférer et réguler tous ces activités-là.
English, the French is still cancelled.
Kindly mute yourself, please.
Donc, la propriété industrielle doit pouvoir à soutenir la production, créer la capacité pour les populations, pour les créateurs. Et on voit en cela une nécessité de protéger les savoir-faire, une nécessité de financer le développement des marques et d'aider la création des entreprises et la défense des droits. Tout au long de sa présentation, elle a pris le temps des cas d'études concernant le chocolat et le thé, et en donnant des exemples qui étaient très intéressants. Et elle a donné le cas du Kenya, où ils ont élaboré une politique, un projet de loi qui promeut les exportations. Et en prenant exemple de cela, elle a dit qu'on pourrait y avoir une seule autorité, un seul guichet unique, un mandat de promotion et surtout l'adaptation des données de la production et aux données des exportations, ce qui donnerait une base de données globale. En fait, la présentatrice conclut en disant que nous devons nécessairement protéger les créations, la production et renforcer le système qui est déjà présent, c'est-à-dire le système de marques, les dessins et modèles, des droits d'auteur, des indications géographiques et autres. Merci. Voilà un peu.
Okay, thank you so much, Michelle. And once again, thank you, Ms. Lenjo. So without further ado, I'd like to move on to the next presenter. And it's my honor to introduce Ms. Mecham. So Ms. Mecham Teo is a Cameroonian marketing consultant, entrepreneur, and expert in inclusive value chain development. With more than 20 years of professional experience, she advises enterprises, public institutions, partners on marketing strategy, business development, and the strengthening of productive ecosystems. She is and General Director of Sphinx, a consulting firm that supports small and medium-sized enterprises, social and solidarity economy organizations, and local governments in developing competitive and sustainable value chains across the agri-food, fisheries, creative and cultural industries and economic sectors. Ms. Mecham is actively engaged in promoting women's economic empowerment, inclusive entrepreneurship, and the valorization of indigenous knowledge. She serves as Secretary General of the Fortitude Cassava Corporation and regularly contributes to regional and international dialogues on inclusive business models, the blue economy, and sustainable economic development. Her initiatives include the Ndema Lasiu Festival, dedicated local fisheries canteen, a network of 100% made in Cameroon school canteens, and led with Your Image Capital, a leadership program supporting women entrepreneurs and business leaders. A TEDx speaker and mentor, Ms. Mecham is committed to advancing innovative growth and sustainable development across Africa through entrepreneurship strategies and locally driven solutions. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Mecham Tayo, the General Director of Cabinet Sphinx, who will be delivering a presentation on securing Africa's competitive advantage from innovation and creativity to ownership and commercialization. Ms. Tayo, we welcome you to the stage. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, are you getting me? Bonsoir, Michel.
Bonsoir, Madame Enchou. Est-ce que vous permettez que je puisse vous inviter également en français?
Je suis de rejoindre.
On a donné votre présentation en anglais. Vous voulez bien que je donne aussi pour l'auditoire qui est francophone? OK. Le temps que Madame Menchoun nous revient, nous voulons bien noter que Madame Menchoun est consultante en marketing, entrepreneur et experte camerounaise spécialisée dans le développement des chaînes de valeur inclusives. Forte de plus de 20 ans d'expérience professionnelle, elle conseille les entreprises, les institutions publiques et partenaires au développement sur la stratégie marketing, le développement commercial et le renforcement des écosystèmes productifs. Madame Taïou est la fondatrice et directrice générale de SFINGE, un cabinet de conseil qui accompagne les petites et moyennes entreprises, les organisations de l'économie sociale et solidaire, ainsi que les collectivités locales dans le développement des chaînes de valeur compétitives et durables. Son intervention couvre divers secteurs tels que l'agroalimentaire, la pêche, les industries créatives et culturelles, ainsi que l'économie circulaire. Parmi ces initiatives figure le festival Ndemalassou, dédié à la promotion de la pêche locale, Cantine, un réseau de cantines scolaires proposant une offre 100% made in Cameroon, Lead with Your Image Capital, un programme de leadership destiné aux femmes entrepreneurs et dirigeantes d'entreprises, conférencières, TEDx et mentors. Madame Taïou s'engage à promouvoir l'innovation, la croissance inclusive et le développement durable en Afrique grâce à l'entrepreneuriat, au partenariat stratégique et à des solutions ancrées dans les réalités locales. Maintenant, nous aurons le privilège d'écouter sa présentation et d'apprendre de ce qu'elle voudrait bien nous partager ce matin. Merci. À vous, Madame Taïou, s'il vous plaît.
Oui. Alors, bonsoir encore. Ah, c'est pas facile. Merci beaucoup pour la présentation. J'aimerais bien que vous m'accordez de commencer par le début. Donc, OK. Alors, je suis honorée d'échanger avec vous aujourd'hui sur le sujet de la sécurisation de l'avantage compétitif de l'Afrique. On innove, on crée, mais est-ce qu'on s'approprie réellement la valeur ajoutée au plan commercial? Alors, le premier cadrage, il dit quoi? Il dit que l'Afrique est riche d'un potentiel créatif. L'Afrique est riche d'innovation, mais seulement est-ce que nous arrivons à récupérer la valeur de nos créations? Nous avons trois faits de diagnostic. La première chose, l'abondance créative liée à la richesse du continent. Nous avons un continent riche de ses savoir-faire endogènes, de ses savoir-faire créatifs, riche de la diversité de ses terroirs. C'est-à-dire que du nord au sud, de l'est à l'ouest, on voit une immense diversité. Et le Cameroun, d'où je viens, a la chance de pouvoir porter tous les écosystèmes qui représentent un peu ces entités. On va parler du terroir marin, du terroir sahélien, du terroir équatorial, du terroir côtier. On voit aussi une extraordinaire biodiversité de faune et de flore, et bien sûr des cultures dynamiques, un vrai patchwork de cultures qui irrigue tout le continent. Tout cela représente un gisement d'actifs immatériels qui ne sont même pas encore répertoriés et inventoriés. Ça fait donc qu'on a une très faible captation juridique de l'ensemble de ce potentiel parce qu'on ne peut pas protéger ce qu'on ne connaît pas. Et on le voit dans les statistiques au API, les dépôts sont marginaux au regard de tout ce qu'on peut avoir sur les filières. Si on prend les filières alimentaires, la gastronomie, les savoir-faire culinaires, les savoir-faire artisanaux, les savoir-faire textiles, on va se rendre compte que la captation juridique est encore extraordinairement faible. Et tant qu'on n'a pas protégé, on ne peut pas revendiquer. Ça veut donc dire que les produits qui sont vendus sans marque, sans récit, sans droit de propriété, en réalité, ne capitalisent sur le continent. Donc, on a cette extraordinaire activité créative et commerciale, mais dont la marge se forme ailleurs. Alors, le triple verrou, il vient d'où? Comment est-ce que ce verrou de captation se fait? Les contraintes qui empêchent de transformer notre capital créatif en actif économique sont de trois ordres majeurs. Au plan juridique, on va le redire encore, la sous-protection des actifs immatériels via tous les dispositifs de l'OAPI font que dans l'ensemble de brevets, de marques, d'indications géographiques et même de marques collectives, tous ces outils et instruments sont méconnus des acteurs des filières. Et là-dessus, c'est un combat que nous menons au comité, beaucoup de pédagogie, il faut le faire pour répertorier, inventorier, modéliser et protéger ces actifs. Le deuxième verrou est totalement commercial, c'est-à-dire que dès qu'on a protégé, quelle est la visibilité au plan commercial? Et là, on parle de structuration marketing. À ce niveau, on n'a pas de marque, on n'a pas de récit. Comment est-ce qu'on va générer une demande consommateur? Tout ce qui se consomme est lié à la séduction, à la visibilité. Donc, un verrou commercial qui fait plafonner totalement même les actifs résiduels qui sont protégés. Et le troisième verrou est celui de l'échelle. On a encore un émiettement extraordinaire de tous les marchés, émiettement extraordinaire de tous les produits qui sont sur le marché, de sorte que nos marchés finalement deviennent très étroits. Trop étroits pour pouvoir représenter un véritable marché de consommation à plusieurs chiffres. Donc, sans taille critique, l'investissement devient difficile à capitaliser. Et là-dessus, justement, avec la ZELCAF, face à une grande hétérogénéité des normes. Le produit qui a été certifié au Cameroun par sa structure de certification a besoin d'une batterie de documents au Nigeria, au Zimbabwe, en Algérie, en Tunisie, et ça décourage les initiatives que offre le marché unique africain. À ce moment-là, on se dit bien qu'il y a quand même un process. Il faut qu'au niveau de façon intégrée, on passe de la création à la captation de valeur. Donc, on sait qui crée. On sait que chez nos artisans, chez nos petites entreprises, au sein de nos coopératives, il y a beaucoup d'innovation. Au sein de nos hubs, au sein de nos startups, il y a beaucoup de savoir-faire et de créativité. Mais il faut multiplier les guichets de protection pour mobiliser l'ensemble des outils de protection des actifs immatériels qu'offre l'OAPI. On est encore insuffisamment informé des dispositifs de l'OAPI. Et tout notre plaidoyer, c'est de dire l'OAPI doit aller à la rencontre des organisations féminines, des organisations d'artisans, multiplier les guichets avec les gouvernements pour avoir une protection à large échelle, de large ampleur. Et ensuite, dès qu'on est sûr de ce qu'on a, parce qu'on a le droit avec nous, la valorisation avec l'ingénierie marketing va nous permettre de construire des récits, de construire des narratifs qui sont liés à notre imaginaire et nous permettent de porter justement notre culture à standard égal avec les autres qui nous envahissent au quotidien. Et le marché de la ZELCAF est totalement ouvert sur les 54 pays du continent. L'Afrique a largement de quoi faire. Ça veut donc dire que quand on parle de compétitivité africaine, on doit le voir comme une course de relais. C'est la protection qui passe le relais à la valorisation, qui passe le volet à la commercialisation à l'échelle du continent. Et comme dans toute course de relais, quand il y a un maillon défaillant, c'est toute l'équipe qui s'écroule. On doit donc considérer que l'initiative d'aujourd'hui peut donner naissance et devrait donner naissance à des initiatives intégrées pour que tous les autres acteurs de cette chaîne en amont de la protection et en aval de la protection soient réunis pour construire une véritable chaîne inclusive qui peut permettre de faire la différence. En parlant de protection, quand on a un titre de propriété OAPI, on n'est qu'au début de l'aventure. On n'a pas encore constitué l'avantage compétitif. On a un titre de propriété comme en matière foncière, par exemple, civil, quand on parle d'un acte de licence. Très bien. Donc, tous les outils qui sont encore sous-exploités, que ce soit sur les filières agricoles, que ce soit sur les filières pastorales, que ce soit sur les filières halieutiques, que ce soit sur l'économie créative, toutes ces marques-là, dès qu'elles sont protégées, il faut absolument qu'on les valorise. Et là, nous menons un plaidoyer pour qu'il y ait une vraie campagne de promotion des brevets déjà déposés et des inventeurs par l'OAPI. Parce que l'exemple sert de leçon. Aujourd'hui, le jeune Africain ne sait pas qu'il y a des d'autres inventeurs noirs, ne sait pas qui ils sont. Donc, il manque de modèles dans ce sens. Et on pense que ce seraient ceux qui peuvent servir de traction et de motivation pour susciter, et même d'ambassadeurs, pour susciter les dépôts massifs. Et comme on le disait, dès qu'on a les dépôts, on peut donc commencer le travail de narration. Ce travail de narration veut dire qu'on va passer de l'actif juridique à l'actif économique. Et un actif économique est vivant. Un actif économique est dynamique parce qu'il faut construire en premier lieu l'architecture de la marque. C'est-à-dire que est-ce qu'on est sur une marque collective, est-ce qu'on est sur une marque nationale, est-ce qu'on est sur une marque ombrelle, etc. Pour le cadre des travaux des coopératives, par exemple, des SAFA de coopératives, la grande recommandation est celle des marques ombrelles nationales. On va prendre le cas des labels artisanaux, on va prendre le cas des IGP, on connaît le poivre de Penja, mais il n'y a pas de marque nationale camerounaise autour du poivre de Penja, par exemple. Donc, l'éducation géographique n'a pas profité à la création, à un récit par les acteurs locaux. Et c'est là où la deuxième étape, comme je disais tout à l'heure, en matière intégrée est importante. C'est-à-dire que dès qu'on a créé des marques, on affirme les positionnements, on raconte, on construit le récit narratif, on rentre vers les parents, vers les pères de nos pères, vers les mères de nos mères, récupérer ce qui a été le savoir-faire et on les transforme donc en actifs de confiance, en préférence d'achat et en critères de différenciation sur le marché mondial. À ce moment-là, ça permet de structurer totalement la filière, de savoir que le producteur s'arrête à tel niveau de segment sur un cahier de charges, l'artisan, les institutions, etc. Quand c'est une marque partagée, le marketiste intervient à tel niveau et les structures de promotion à l'export, en ce qui concerne les foires, etc., prennent le relais justement pour créer la valeur locale. Ça veut dire que l'OAPI et la ZELCAF devraient avoir une structure commune autour d'organisations comme celle de Sfench pour favoriser des activités intégrées qui vont permettre d'avoir donc la possibilité d'évaluer là où on en est. Où est-ce qu'on en est avec les actifs déjà déposés à l'OAPI? Qui sont-ils? Qui sont ces inventeurs? Où sont leurs produits? Est-ce que c'est déjà des produits industriels? Est-ce que les brevets dorment mais ils n'ont pas pu les développer? Est-ce qu'ils ont un actif commercial? Qu'est-ce que la ZELCAF peut faire de façon prioritaire pour eux? Comment leur ouvrir l'accès au marché? Et qu'est-ce que Sfench peut faire pour justement l'ingénierie marketing et porter ces marques-là? Sur nos marchés, quand on parle d'actifs stratégiques, les marques, quand elles sont protégées et qu'elles communiquent, elles n'ont pas encore l'accès au marché continental. L'accès au marché continental veut dire s'insérer dans la chaîne de valeur média, par exemple, s'insérer dans la visibilité des grands événements, par exemple. Et j'interpelle encore, je fais encore un plaidoyer envers l'intégration des structures continentales. On va prendre un cas concret sur la mode et le textile. Les grands créateurs européens, américains, sont connus et ont des ambassadeurs connus. C'est-à-dire que les créateurs français savent pouvoir compter sur leur première dame. Est-ce qu'au niveau de la CAF, pour prendre l'exemple du football, on sait sur cette organisation continentale pour créer un marché pour les créateurs africains? On ne fait pas encore. On fait encore des initiatives très isolées et ça ne sert pas le marché continental. Donc, vous allez avoir des marques locales qui sont fortes, mais uniquement sur des marchés nationaux. Si on parle de la cosmétique, c'est pareil. À Dakar, à Abidjan, à Maputo, vous pouvez avoir des marques qui ont pignon sur rue, mais à l'échelle du continent, vous n'aurez personne. Quand on prend sur les marques financières, on va avoir Zenith Bank, mais on ne va jamais voir Zenith Bank sponsoriser la CAF, sponsoriser l'Assemblée générale de la BAD. Mais c'est un problème. Qui sponsorise l'Assemblée générale ou qui est partenaire de l'Assemblée générale de Afri-Exim Bank? Qui est partenaire de l'Assemblée générale de la BAD? Qui est partenaire de l'Assemblée générale de la BDAC ou de la BCAO? C'est là-dessus que nous devons absolument insérer les marques locales pour leur donner l'amplitude continentale. Donc, le marché continental n'est pas qu'une vue de l'esprit. C'est une échelle qui demande d'avoir pour chevaux de Troie des instruments continentaux. Ça permet d'amortir l'investissement de marque, mais ça permet d'engager aussi les populations. Parce que nous ne pouvons pas intégrer les marchés en termes de pays sans intégrer les consommateurs et la consommation. Dans les réseaux de distribution de supermarchés sur le continent, on voit bien que les marques européennes vont bénéficier de structures de distribution tout autant européennes. Alors, je vais prendre une marque comme Carrefour ou comme Auchan. On va la trouver, ou Shoprite. On va la trouver à travers le continent. Mais où sont les marques de distribution africaines? Où sont les marques qui vont permettre de distribution, les réseaux de distribution qui vont permettre d'insérer ces marques? Nous avons des soucis à ce niveau. Ça veut donc dire que si on a au niveau du marché continental, cette chaîne de valeur de la distribution qui ne permet pas de rendre le produit disponible à l'Africain, au consommateur africain, on aura toujours un émiettement au niveau national. Maintenant, entre les systèmes de propriété intellectuelle, il y a aussi cet émiettement qu'on appelle l'interopérabilité. Et j'en parlais tout à l'heure en disant, mais lorsque vous êtes certifié au Cameroun, est-ce que ça vous permet d'entrer sur le marché sénégalais ou sur le marché kényan? Pas du tout. Donc, vous avez beau être protégé au Cameroun, peut-être ça vaut pour l'Afrique centrale, mais si vous allez en Afrique de l'Ouest, qu'est-ce que vous devenez? Et si vous allez à l'Est, qu'est-ce que vous devenez? Je prends la RDC est en cheval sur plusieurs zones économiques, mais c'est impossible de protéger, de faire bénéficier de la protection CEMA aux produits qui vont en RDC. Et vous voyez que ça fait un plafond de verre tout de suite. Ça veut donc dire que l'échelle continentale est certes à nos portées, mais nous avons encore des freins structuraux pour transformer nos actifs stratégiques en actifs régionaux. Et je renouvelle le plaidoyer envers l'intégration de nos structures continentales. Alors, ce que Sfench a proposé au gouvernement du Cameroun à travers le ministère des Petites Entreprises, qui peut d'ailleurs être dupliqué sur le continent, c'est d'avoir un label artisanal officiel. Il me semble, en l'état actuel de mes informations, que le Maroc est le plus abouti avec le label national et les labels territoriaux. Ils ont découpé le pays en territoires et chaque territoire a une spécialité artisanale qui sont vendues comme telles avec une plateforme numérique. Donc, la valorisation, la protection et la valorisation peuvent être mutualisées au sein d'une architecture de marque nationale. Et cette architecture de marque nationale part à la conquête des régions, puis du continent, vice-versa dans tous les sens. Donc, on intégrerait l'OAPI et les ministères chargés respectivement. Donc, si on a une marque nationale avec les labels territoriaux, partout en Afrique, on aura fait un très grand bond. Nous prenons l'exemple de ce que nous faisons sur la filière halieutique, où nous avons introduit au Cameroun l'action de marketing bleu. Alors, il me semble que 45 des 54 pays africains partagent une façade maritime, mais il n'y a pas de marque halieutique. Tout ce que nous avons en poissons transformés au plan industriel sont des marques d'ailleurs, le thon, les conserves, etc. Nous ne transformons pas. Et ce que nous avons commencé au Cameroun, c'est de préparer dans le terrain à des indications géographiques, à des marques collectives en structurant les producteurs, structurer les pêcheurs, structurer les transformatrices. Mais les mamans qui transforment le poisson frais en poisson fumé, ils sont encore dans un artisanat de premier ordre. Il n'y a pas de marque de poisson fumé africaine, même quand c'est les mêmes espèces à travers le continent. Quand vous êtes sur le marché aux poissons à Dakar, vous avez de très belles espèces de poissons, mais elles sont commercialisées à l'export en produits, pas en marque. C'est de la valeur qui échappe au Sénégal. C'est pareil sur la façade maritime du Cameroun. C'est pareil à Bamako. C'est pareil au Togo. C'est pareil à Abidjan. Ça, c'est quelque chose que nous pouvons changer. Ce que Sfenj a fait au Cameroun, c'est de structurer les artisans qui sont dans la gastronomie, qui sont dans le street food, parce que c'est comme ça qu'on mange en Afrique, au Cameroun, c'est le poisson brisé. Puis les artisans qui sont dans les restaurants, les chefs de cuisine. Et nous avons pensé qu'il faut créer les réseaux de distribution. Donc, au TEDx Yaoundé, nous avons vendu le concept de bar à poisson. À ce moment-là, on peut avoir une marque labellisée pour laquelle on achète le poisson comme les autres. La France a le label rouge, par exemple, pour le poisson. Donc, l'équation de l'avantage compétitif pour nous, c'est vraiment de dire le marketing, l'ingénierie marketing est au cœur de la valeur de cette valorisation. C'est le pont, c'est la passerelle qu'il nous faut entre le juridique et le marché, sous réserve que nous soyons assez malins pour créer les conditions d'un marché unique qui fonctionne. À ce moment-là, on a donc 3 leviers. Le premier levier, c'est celui des entrepreneurs. Femmes ou hommes, artisans, entrepreneurs, PME, on a besoin que l'OAPI soit sur le terrain. On a besoin que l'OAPI soit agile pour que les protections se fassent tôt. D'ailleurs, dans toutes les structures d'accompagnement à la formalisation, on aimerait avoir un mandataire OAPI. Dès qu'un regroupement de producteurs doit créer des statuts pour devenir coopératif, mais tout de suite, on leur propose la marque commerciale. Un artisan informel qui devient un entrepreneur, tout de suite, il doit remplir les conditions pour un nom commercial.
Madame Tayo.
Et bien sûr, oui.
We are left with less than 5 minutes. Less than 4 minutes.
Et bien sûr,
sorry for the interruption.
D'accord. Donc, je vais terminer en disant, très bien, on sait qu'on crée, mais ça ne suffit plus. On sait qu'on peut protéger, mais ça ne suffit pas non plus. On doit créer, protéger et valoriser en plus à l'échelle du continent. Donc, je vous remercie. Les autres diapos sont des diapos d'échange, donc je suis à votre écoute. Allô?
Yes,
Allô?
please. Yes?
Oui?
We can
Oui, j'ai
hear
terminé,
you.
je suis à votre écoute. Oui. J'ai terminé ma présentation ici et je suis à l'écoute pour les échanges.
She's done with her presentation and then she's listening for the follow-up. Hello, Mrs. Mumbi. She's done.
She's done.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Michelle, can you kindly translate for the participants?
Okay, I will try to do my best.
Into English?
Okay.
Yes, please.
I need to do it in English?
Yes, please, if you can.
She will do it by herself, right? That's what you are proposing.
No, she's just asked if she can do it. If she can do it, then it's well with us. It's okay.
Okay. So I need to go back in English. Okay. What I was saying is that Africa is renowned for its creativity, but this creativity is not transformed into market share on the global market because of lack of copyright and lack of a strong and robust marketing strategy. It means that all we have in our lands, all we have in our countries is a lot of biodiversity, but this biodiversity is not translated into market value. And why isn't it transformed into market value? Because of copyright issues. Copyright issues linked to the fact that people are not aware of what OAPI can do for them. These handcraft people, these small size enterprises, these mummies who sells or transform fish, who sells and transform our cultures, don't know what our OAPI remains for. So we need that OAPI should break down and go for little people to help them know about it. We are we are asking that OAP should also run for ambassadors. Those people, those inventors who are already have brevet, I call it, who are already have inventions, who have already have brands, needs to be ambassadors and have the power. They need to be more visible in our medias, in our newspapers, in our TV programs, to enhance, to encourage the other people. The next level of weakness is on markets, because as you have a product you also have copyright, you need to have a strong storytelling narrative, and we don't have it because we don't know our history, we don't know our culture. So we need to go back to our origins, to raise up our cultures and build authentic narrative, to make the difference of what we have for what we are absorbing from Europe or for USA. The third weakness is the spread of the market. When you have an economic strength on national market, we observe that these operators don't have the strength to go to spread throughout Africa because of a lack of the lack of infrastructures, the lack of a common narrative issues, the lack of a common distribution network. Because when you have this European or US American structure, they have large scale. Shoprite. Shoprite is a very large network. What else? What other network do we have to help showcase the national commercials or the national products or African products? We don't own. So we need to work on that. We don't have to work only approach, to know that when we have created something and then we have the copyright, it's okay. When we have a marketing strategy, it's okay. But we have to bring the product to the hands of consumers. And to bring the product to the hand of consumers, it needs distribution strategy. It needs distribution network. It needs visibility throughout the continent. Because as from now, we don't have the mutualization of our continental infrastructure, institutions, let's say continental institution. Let's say who is the sponsor of annual assembly of a BAD, for example? Who is the sponsor of our CAF, of AFCON competition, for example? We don't have visibility of our own brands there. You will see when there is a AFCON competition of AFCON tournament, we don't have African sponsor. Even our Dangote flagship sponsor does not exist there. It's not normal. It means that all the work that will be done before by registration, by copywriting, by strategy marketing, we lack visibility, we lack of ownership, we lack value to consumers.
Thank you, Mrs. Tayo. I'm going to
distribution structure.
Thank you, Mrs. Tayo. I'm going to cut you short.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Well explained. I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you short because of time. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Tayo. Merci. I hope I'm saying it right. Merci beaucoup. I hope my French has improved. Thank you so much for that rich, commercially grounded presentation. One thing that really spoke out for me is that we have failed to roll out to the market marketplace. And once we are at the marketplace, can our products speak for ourselves? When we look at Africa, especially Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, they grow a lot of cocoa. But branding, are they processing? Are they gaining profit out of this cocoa through, is it chocolate? Is it drinking chocolate? Is it chocolate? So for me, what you spoke out loudly towards the end of your presentation is that there is a lack of awareness. There is need for the ones that are performing well, the innovators, the innovators that are performing well in IP, that have got a grounded that have grounded well with their IP. They should be ambassadors, but not just be ambassadors, but let them be visible. Let them be a story, or let them be the best practice based on the local, of course, based on our different countries. And the other thing that you said was that we need to build our structures and strengthen them, and speak more, and as we build our structures, we should not lose our identity. And there's one thing that you said also that really struck me, is that most of our history, most of our storytelling about our products has been lost. That narrative has been lost. So we need to work towards that. We need to make sure that we gain back our history back. I want to, without further ado, I want us to get to the third presenter. And once again, I will request Miss Mali to introduce our last presenter.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. So it is my honor to introduce our final presenter, Ms. Menatala Elkotami. So Ms. Elkotami is a senior expert in intellectual property and innovation policy with almost 2 decades of experience in IP management, capacity building, and international cooperation. She currently serves as Director of Intellectual Property and Public Health Administration at the Egyptian Intellectual Property Authority. Ms. Mena holds a Master's in Intellectual Property Sciences, and she is a recognized speaker, trainer, and author on topics related to intellectual property, innovation ecosystems, and SDI policy. Her career spans diverse roles, including Senior Pharmaceutical Patents Examiner at the Egyptian Patent Office, IP Trainer at the IP Center of Excellence, National Cooperation Coordinator at the Academy of Scientific Research and Technology. She has worked closely with the WIPO Academy as a distance learning tutor, course designer, and international consultant, contributing to the establishment of IP training institutions in Syria, Pakistan, and Vietnam. She's passionate about advancing IP as a driver of sustainable development and global competitiveness. So it is my pleasure to welcome Ms. Menatala Elkotami, Director of IP and Public Health at the Egyptian Intellectual Property Authority. She'll be delivering a presentation on financing African innovation, closing the investments and commercialization gap through intellectual property. I'd like to call on Michelle or Dr. Angie to kindly interpret it to our French audience. Thank you. Hey, Michelle, are you there, or Dr. Angie?
I was saying I will do the interpretation for the presentation, and then Dr. Andy will come after her presentation to do the recap and the summary. Is that good?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. So we are now, oh please. Nous sommes maintenant sur le point d'écouter la présentation de Madame Menatala El-Kotami, qui est une experte confirmée en propriété intellectuelle et en politique d'innovation, riche de près de 20 années d'expérience dans la gestion de la propriété intellectuelle, le renforcement des capacités, la coopération internationale. Elle occupe actuellement le poste de directrice de l'administration de la propriété intellectuelle et de la santé publique au sein de l'Office égyptien de la propriété intellectuelle, en abrégé EGIP. Elle est titulaire d'un master en sciences de la propriété intellectuelle et elle est conférencière, formatrice et auteure reconnue sur les sujets tels que la propriété intellectuelle, les écosystèmes d'innovation et les politiques de sciences, technologie et d'innovation. Son parcours professionnel comprend diverses fonctions, notamment celle d'examinatrice principale des brevets pharmaceutiques à l'Office égyptien des brevets, de formatrice en propriété intellectuelle au Centre d'excellence de la propriété intellectuelle et celle de coordonnatrice de la coopération internationale à l'Académie de recherche scientifique de la technologie, en abrégé ASRT. Elle a collaboré étroitement avec l'Académie de propriété intellectuelle en tant que tutrice d'enseignement à distance, conceptrice de cours et consultante internationale, contribuant ainsi à la création d'institutions de formation en propriété intellectuelle en Syrie, au Pakistan et au Vietnam. Madame El-Kotami a à cœur de promouvoir la propriété intellectuelle comme de compétitivité mondiale. Son thème portera sur le financement de l'innovation africaine, fermer les gaps d'investissement et de commercialisation par la propriété intellectuelle. Vous avez la parole, s'il vous plaît, madame.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be with you today. And at first, I want to thank the organizing committee for this invitation and for having me here with you today. So the reflections shared today are not offered as definitive answers, but they are contributing, I hope, will be an ongoing continental conversation. So today I would like to invite you to think about intellectual property from a perspective that extend well beyond legal protection. I would like us to consider IP as an economic infrastructure, not simply as a legal framework and not as a regulatory system of the fundamental mechanism through which knowledge is transformed into investment, investment into an enterprise, and enterprise into sustainable economic. And this brings me to my first point. Sorry. When conversation turn to Africa's innovation landscape, we often hear two very different narratives. One suggests that Africa like innovation, the other celebrates Africa as one of the world's fast-growing ecosystem. And in my view, neither tells the complete story. Because Africa never lacked creativity, it has never lacked talent, it has never lacked ambition. Africa is not facing an innovation crisis. In fact, the evidence is just the opposite. According to WIPO's Global Innovation Index, Africa's scientific publication has grown at an average of annual rate of 8.7% over the past decade, while investment in R&D has increased by approximately 6.6% annually. And these are encouraging indicators of a continent steadily strengthening its knowledge base. At the same time, innovation ecosystems are becoming increasingly vibrant. Across the continent, we see remarkable scientific research, vibrant entrepreneurial communities, expanding digital ecosystems, increasingly sophisticated solutions addressing local and global challenges. Innovation is taking place in healthcare, agriculture, artificial intelligence, climate technologies, financial services, manufacturing, and the creative economy. entrepreneurial energy of Africa's young population represent one of the continent's greatest strategic assets. Universities are producing increasingly sophisticated research. Young entrepreneurs are building innovative businesses at unprecedented pace. Technology hubs continue to expand across our cities. Our startups are solving uniquely African challenges through uniquely African solutions. Yet, despite this tremendous potential, only a relatively small proportion of these innovations successfully become scalable businesses, technologies, or globally competitive products. And this is what I consider Africa's innovation paradox. The continent is producing ideas at an accelerating pace, but the pathway from invention to investment and from investment to commercialization remains fragmented. The challenge before us is therefore not simply increasing innovation. The challenge is enabling innovation to generate sustainable economic value, and this distinction is important. Innovation alone does not create prosperity. Commercialization of innovation does. This distinction is important because an invention sitting on a laboratory shelf changes nothing. A patent sitting unused in a portfolio creates little value. A brilliant software application that never reach investors can transform an economy. Ideas only begin to generate impact when investable. So if there is one message I would like you to take away from this opening slide, it is the challenge facing Africa today is not generating innovation, it is transforming innovation into investable assets capable of creating sustainable economic value. The question we would ask ourselves here is what makes one innovation attract investment while another, perhaps equally brilliant, never moves beyond the laboratory or the prototype? The answer is the quality of the idea itself. Investors do not invest simply because an innovation is technically impressive. They invest when they can clearly identify value, understand ownership, assess risk, and see a credible pathway to commercial return. And this is precisely where IP changed the conversation. Traditionally, we have viewed IP through illegal, we associate it with patents, trademarks, and copyrights. We have focused on rights, protection, registration, enforcement. All these remain essential, but they are no longer sufficient. In today's knowledge economy, IP performs a much broader role. It transforms innovation into an economic asset. When an investor evaluates a company, they are not merely examining a patent certificate. They are asking different questions. Is technology protected? Does the company possess proprietary know-how that competitors cannot easily replicate? Is there a trusted brand with market recognition? Are there valuable software platform assets or trade secrets? Can this technology be licensed, scaled, or deployed across multiple markets? These are investment questions. IP provides many of the answers. This shift is reflected in the evolution of global economy itself. Today, more than 90% of the market value in the S&P 500 is derived from intangible assets, including IP, brands, software, data, proprietary technologies. While Africa's innovation ecosystem is at a different stage of development, the direction is unmistakable. Value is increasing, created by knowledge rather than by physical alone. In practical terms, IP creates value in several ways. It establishes ownership and exclusivity. It differentiates a business from its competitors. And uncertainty for investors. It strengthens enterprise valuation. It creates opportunities for licensing, strategic partnerships, and technology transfer. Perhaps most importantly, it provides investors with confidence that innovation can be translated into commercial success, and confidence is one of the currencies in investment. And this is why I believe we need to rethink of IP. It's not the final legal step after innovation. It should be embedded into the innovation strategy from the outset, shaping how ideas are developed, financed, and ultimately commercialized. If potential to transform innovation into an investable asset, the next question is obvious. Why do so many promising innovations still fail to reach the market? And to answer that, we need to look more closely at where the commercialization process breaks down. If Africa possesses innovation, why does commercialization continue to lag? In my view, the answer does not lie with any single institution. It lies within the broader innovation ecosystem. Commercialization is a collective process. When one part of the ecosystem is weak, the value chain is affected. Let me briefly explain this. Research institutes continue to generate valuable knowledge and important scientific discoveries. However, many still face challenges in translating research into market-ready technologies. Technology transfer capabilities, commercialization support, and sustained industry engagement remain uneven across institutions. For startups and SMEs, the challenge is often different. Innovation moves quickly, while IP strategy is frequently considered only products have been developed. Commercialization planning and investment readiness are sometimes overlooked during the years of business growth. Investors increasingly recognize the importance of innovation, but many continue to face practical difficulties in assessing the value of IP assets. Unlike tangible assets, patents, software, trade secrets, and proprietary data require specialized expertise to evaluate, making investment decisions more complex. For governments and public institutions, they have made significant commitments to strengthening innovation ecosystem, yet support mechanisms often involve multiple agencies and programs that are not always sufficiently coordinated. Commercialization require an integrated approach that connects research, industry, finance, and IP. What is important to emphasize that these are not unique to one country. These are not unique to one region. They are common features that are of emerging innovation ecosystems around the world. The encouraged message is that ecosystems can become more connected, more coordinated, and ultimately more effective at transforming innovation into economic impact. This is why I often say that does not have innovation gap. Africa has an ecosystem gap. The question is no longer generate more ideas. The more important question is how do we enable more ideas to become investment-ready enterprises? And having examined where commercialization often break down, next question is about commercialization differently. Too often, innovation is presented as simple linear journey. Research, path, market, though obtaining automatically leads to commercial success. In reality, commercialization is far more complex. Innovation does not move in a straight line. It moves through interconnected value chain in which every stage depends on the strengths of the one before it. It begins with knowledge creation, scientific research, technology discovery, and creative thinking. That knowledge generates innovation in the form of products, technology, services, or processes. At this point, many people believe the next step is simply filing a patent. I would suggest that this is one of the biggest misconceptions in innovation policy. IP is not the destination. It is an enabling mechanism. A strategic IP framework helps innovators protect their competitive advantage, manage ownership, evaluate freedom to operate, create assets that can be valued by investors and commercial partners. But IP alone is not enough. Those protected assets be supported by business development. Innovators must understand markets, customer needs, business models, strategic partnerships, regulatory pathways, manufacturing considerations. Only then does innovation become genuinely investment ready. Investment in turn enables commercialization. It provides the capital needed to manufacture products, expand operations, enter new markets, recruit talent, and scale promising technologies. And commercialization is not the end of the leader. Its ultimate purpose is impact, creating jobs, improving competitiveness, addressing societal challenges, strengthening economic resilience, generating sustainable growth. The important lesson is that every stage in this journey depends on the integrity of the entire system. If commercialization support is weak, promising research remains in the laboratory. If I manage, investors perceive greater risk. If financing is unavailable, Innovative enterprises struggle to scale. If business is overlooked, protected technologies may never find the market. In other words, innovation does not fail because ideas lack quality. Innovation fails when the value chain connecting knowledge to markets is incomplete. And that's why strengthening isolated components is rarely enough. Improving patent system alone will not solve commercialization challenges. Increasing research funding alone will not solve commercialization challenges. Expanding venture capital alone will not solve commercial challenges. What we need is integrated innovation ecosystem where research institutions, innovators, IP professionals, investors, industry, and governments operate as connected partners rather than independent actors. Because commercialization is not responsibility of one stakeholder, it is the product of an ecosystem working together. And having explored the commercialization journey, the natural question becomes, what does an ecosystem that consistently attracts investment actually look like? In my view, financing innovation requires much more than increasing availability of capital. Access to finance is important, but finance alone does not create investable innovation. Investment flows when confidence exists. Confidence is created through institution capabilities, partnerships, and sound intellectual property practices. Allow me to suggest 4 interconnected pillars together create an environment where innovation become investment ready. First is aware investors. Increasingly, enterprise value is driven by intangible assets. Yet, many investors still rely primarily on traditional financial indicators. Strengthening the capacity of investors to evaluate patents, trade secrets, software, brands, data, and licensing opportunities can significantly improve investment decision and reduce perceived risk. Second pillar is commercialization support. Even the strongest innovation requires support to reach the market. Tech transfer offices, incubators, accelerators, proof of concept funding, mentoring, and industry partnerships all play a vital role in helping innovators navigate the journey from research to market. Third pillar is regional collaboration. Innovation today is increasingly collaborative and cross-border. Africa has a unique opportunity to leverage regional cooperations through shared research initiatives, tech licensing, and innovation networks. Knowledge should move freely across borders, so should innovation. And the fourth pillar is policy alignment. Innovation policy cannot operate independently from industrial policy. Industrial policy cannot be separated from investment policy, and IP policy should not be developed in isolation from either. When these policies reinforce one another, government creates innovators can move more easily from research to commercialization and from commercialization to economic growth. What is important is that none of these pillars function effectively on its own. Strong investors cannot compensate for weak commercial support. Effective policy cannot substitute market-ready innovators. Regional cooperation cannot succeed without appropriate institutional frameworks. Real strength lies in interaction between all 4. At the center of this framework sits innovation finance, not simply finance as access to capital, but finance as the outcome of an ecosystem where IP creates confidence, commercialization creates opportunity, policy creates enabling environment, and the collaboration expand markets. And this, in my view, is how IP moves beyond legal protection and becomes an engine for economic transformation. And as we look ahead of the 7th All Africa IP Summit in Nairobi, I believe we have an important opportunity, not simply to discuss IP, but to redefine its role in Africa's economic future. For many years, conversation about IP have understandably focused on protection. Protection remains essential. But if we want IP to become a genuine driver of economic transformation, our conversation must also focus on what happens after protection. How do we create value? How do we attract investment? How do we commercialize innovation? And how do we strengthen competitiveness? And ultimately, how do we improve people's lives through innovation? The question should shape the next chapter of Africa's innovation agenda. And in my view, there are 6 priorities that deserve our collective attention. First, we need the stronger commercialization framework that connects research institutions, innovators, investors and industry through clear pathways. Second, we should continue strengthening approaches to IP valuation so that intangible assets can be more effectively recognized within and financing decisions. Third, we need to need greater tech transfer capacity. Universities, research institutions, and innovation hubs require the skills, partnerships, institutional support to move discoveries from laboratories into markets. And fourth, we should expand financing mechanism designed specifically for innovation, including proof of concept funding, early stage venture finance, blended finance, and where appropriate IB-backed financing instruments. Fifth, we must ensure that women and young innovators are fully integrated into Africa's innovation ecosystem. Inclusive innovation is not only a matter of equity, it is a driver of economic performance and long-term resilience. Finally, regional collaboration will be essential through stronger partnerships, knowledge exchange, and cross-border licensing. Africa has potential to create larger markets for innovation and accelerate technology diffusion across the continent. If there is one idea I hope we carry forward into Nairobi, it is IP should no longer be viewed as the final step of innovation. It should be recognized as one of its earliest strategic foundations, because when IP is integrated from the beginning, together with business strategy, investment planning, and commercialization, it becomes far more than a legal mechanism. It becomes a catalyst for innovation-led development. And allow me to conclude with one final reflection. Throughout history, nations have competed through natural resources, later through industrial capacity, today economies and knowledge. Assets have until they attract investment. Invest has little value until it generates products, businesses, jobs, and societal impact. The transformation from knowledge to prosperity is where IP has its greatest contribution to make. Innovation creates possibility, IP creates confidence, investment creates opportunity, commercialization creates prosperity, and if Africa is to fully realize its innovation potential, our ambition should not simply be to generate more ideas, it should be to build ecosystems where ideas can be protected, valued, financed, commercialized, and scaled for the benefit of the economies and our people. And that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mina. That was a very insightful presentation. From your presentation, this was my takeaway. Africa's challenge is not the lack of innovation, but the lack of commercialization. It's time that innovations move beyond laboratories, where they will create jobs, attract investment, and stronger collaboration amongst the stakeholders. That is the government, the academia, the industry, the investors. And must move from working in silos into building connected innovation ecosystem. Commercialization, it is not just only about creating impact. It should create a multiplier effect, where one innovation sparks many more opportunities across Africa. Thank you so much once again. Now, dear participants, first and foremost, I want to thank so much all the distinguished speakers for the insightful discussion we've had from the presentations. We've had different perspectives. We will now move into the questions and answer session or contribution, hear from our amazing audience. We have not, I don't know if we have received any questions yet in the chat room. Mali? Any questions?
So, no, I haven't. Okay, thank you.
Forgive me, we will go back to Michelle. I'm sorry about that. I will call upon Michelle to give us an interpretation in French for our participants, for our French speaking participants. Sorry once again.
Okay, thank you. But this time it was the turn of the Dr. Menzi. I hope so.
Dr. Oh, thank you.
Bonsoir. Donc, je vais faire un sommaire de ce que je parlais. Premièrement, Madame a présenté sur le financement des innovations en Afrique. Donc, elle a fait un regard sur la propriété intellectuelle, pas seulement basé sur la juridique, mais aussi sur le plan économique. Sur ces faits, elle a fait part aussi par rapport à l'Organisation mondiale de la propriété intellectuelle. Elle a dit que 8,7% est basé sur la publication et 6,6% est basé sur le développement et la recherche en Afrique. Donc voilà les données qui étaient données par l'Organisation mondiale par rapport à la croissance de la propriété intellectuelle en Afrique. La plupart des innovations là n'atteignent pas au marché au niveau de commercialisation. Donc, l'Afrique doit transformer l'innovation aux commercialisation parce que la plupart des innovations ou bien innovateurs en Afrique ne parviennent pas à arriver au marché. Donc, l'investissement ne peut pas seulement être venir, mais aussi peut assurer les investisseurs pour investir dans les innovations. Et maintenant, les investisseurs demandent beaucoup de questions par rapport à l'innovation. Et quand les questions sont pas, et quand la plupart des questions ne sont pas répondues, les innovateurs ou bien les investisseurs ne viennent pas vers l'innovateur. Donc, le rôle de propriété intellectuelle doit être basé sur l'innovation et n'arrive pas au marché. Mais le problème se pose sur le système et l'utilisateur dépend pas sur les produits. Et les produits sont différents parce que quand on parle de propriété intellectuelle, il y a les produits tangibles et les produits non tangibles. Donc, quand on voit tout ça, ça vient sur le problème de commercialisation et au marché. Donc, la commercialisation du marché n'a pas sur la ligne droite, mais sur une ligne basée sur le produit. Maintenant, la propriété intellectuelle n'est pas le but, mais une procédure pour atteindre au but. Et la commercialisation est aussi un chemin pour créer les emplois et les opportunités pour l'Afrique. Donc, on ne se limite pas à la commercialisation sur les intérêts, mais aussi pour créer des emplois pour les jeunes. Et l'Afrique, pour utiliser les savoirs, pour encourager le développement de l'Afrique, est basée sur 4 piliers. Elle a parlé du pilier le bon police, le savoir sur la propriété intellectuelle et la collaboration régionale. Doit être encouragé pour assurer la commercialisation des propriétés intellectuelles en Afrique. Maintenant, porter ce financement en Afrique pour que l'investisseur doit investir dans les propriétés intellectuelles. Elle a 6 choses qui doivent être impliquées. On parle de la commercialisation, la valorisation des propriétés intellectuelles, la technologie, le financement des innovations et les collaborations régionales pour assurer qu'il y a un suivi sur le financement et dans l'innovation en Afrique. Elle a aussi encouragé tout le monde à être présent pendant le sommet qui aura lieu à Nairobi et parler sur les points clés. Elle a parlé sur 4 points clés qui seront proposés et évalués pendant le sommet à Nairobi. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Angie. So we will now dive into the question and answers. Let's hear from our amazing audience if there are any received thoughtful questions through the chat. If you have any questions for any of the speakers, please use the chat box or raise your virtual hand. Where time permits, we will also invite you to give your contributions or your reflections. As a reminder, please introduce yourself and where you come, which country you're from, and keep your question as brief as possible. Indicate the speaker to whom the question is directed to, if applicable. Thank you so much. The floor is now open. I see a hand. No. Yes, Malcolm Okoth.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, so my name is Malcolm and I'm currently the founder. I'm building a platform that helps the contract and payment infrastructure for creators and brands. And I wanted to, first of all, thank you guys for your insight and perspective. It's quite important, I think, for us to have these conversations. The question I had was, basically, the frameworks that you guys are talking about are repo and WIPO, and obviously the AFTCA is more so at an institutional level. But what about African creators who operate below that, mostly informal deals, no contracts, and work hand over WhatsApp? What has to happen at the transaction level for the individual in terms of the ownership in actual practice? I don't know if that makes sense.
So, Malcolm, what you're trying to ask is about the informal economy, the jua kali. What happens in an instance?
Yes.
Okay.
On the lower level. Yeah.
On a lower level. And any speaker that you had in mind?
Ideally Liz, because I'm in Kenya, so it would directly impact me, but anybody else can answer as well.
Okay. Liz, over to you.
All right, before I answer, please take note that there's a question on the question and answer segment from Dr. Mutai from Kenya. I think it's a question directed to Mr. Lumu. So to answer Malcolm's question, and I imagine you're asking this in context of what you're trying to put together, right?
And it has links to the direct.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that you may want to factor in is how you can assist in formalizing. That would mean identifying the product, what is the price or consideration for the product, and then packaging it in a way that would be easy for then this jua kali artisan to be like on your platform and commercialize. So perhaps figuring out what in a soft and relatable is the offer, the acceptance, consideration type of a thing when we're talking about contract. What is for sale? What is the price? And what does then the buying of this good look like? And then I think eventually you will figure out how to assist such artisans in a non-formal, easy to understand way, because at the end of the day for them it's the buying and selling that matters. Yeah, so that's how I'd answer you in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Malcolm, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it provides a lot of context. That's really what I wanted, so I appreciate it.
Okay, over to Philip. Philip, you have the floor.
Sorry to cut in, Sarah. So
Yes,
we have a question in the Q&A section. If you would just allow me to read it out so that Mr. Lumu could take it before we move to the next question. So this question is from Kibet Mutai. He says he has a question for Mr. Lumu. So should it be the AFCFTA IP protocol being supported by the national and regional IP bodies, or is it the other way around, with the protocol supporting what the national and regional bodies are already doing regarding IP? We already have the example of PAIPO, illustrating what happens when you take a top-down approach to continental IP. No one will follow. Mr. Lomu, the floor is yours. This question is directed to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, thank you for the question. So, as you are, the protocol is the emanation of a gap. How do we fill that gap? National IP laws are in place in Africa. Each country has its own law. Then, when it comes to the AFCFTA, according to the Abuja Treaty, is to come together to establish the African Economic Community, meaning in the long run, we want to have common frameworks on different domains. The AFCFTA is one of them, starting with the trade, and then the other related issues such as investment, digital trade, intellectual property. So why? Because it has been observed that since the independencies of our respective countries, of course, we have IP laws there, IP regimes, IP systems, but all of them put together has their own way of doing. So it creates like discrepancies. It creates like barriers to trade. As it stands now, for instance, you can move a good from Egypt to South Africa using one certificate of origin, the same. Once it's issued, you can flow the goods from Egypt to South Africa. So if the goods arrive in South Africa and someone comes there and say, you are not supposed to enter South African market because these goods, I have some IP rights on them, I've not authorized you to come in, then you are not gone, you're not there. So this is one of the illustration that we are facing when it comes to intellectual property. Fragmented regime. You want an African business to operate on the continent, he has to go to different countries, 55 countries, to apply for the same and then have local protection. So we believe the new trend in the trade shall not continue to work that way. Shall not continue. The business community want to have a more facilitated approach where they can manage cost-effective, reduced duration and burdensome. So what is the AFCFTA doing is to bring together national system by elaborating rules and principles that are harmonized. Meaning, if we start from year 0 based on the protocol, at year 3, we are supposed to have regulations, IP systems that are aligned to the protocol. Meaning, when you take, for instance, in the protocol, which says in the annex on marks that all categories of marks shall be protected in all the countries, we need to see in those countries that all categories of marks can be protected. So there is an exercise there, a gap analysis that should be undertaken to see if that country has aligned its legislation with the obligation that he himself have agreed on under the protocol. So the protocol is the upper regulation, the national law is the other one. So that's how it works. So these are legal matters. So the colleague who is asking the question, I believe he knows that. So the example of that he mentioned, of course, you can still raise it, but we believe that this is an isolated way of doing, and that in the long run, Africa will move together. So the system is meant to bring together the existing national systems, the existing regional system, together with the continental system. It's a system of coexistence, a system of co-interaction. No one is taking over the other one. The continental system is not collapsing the existing one, rather than integrating them and building on them. So that's the perspective. That's the perspective, and the business community is asking for us to move very fast, but we have to move with the pace of the state parties, because at the end of the day, they are the one making the decisions. If they want to have an integrated IP system, or if they want to still maintain a fragmented regime. But already the first question is that they want to have an integrated IP because they have agreed on the protocol, and the next step is to start implementing the obligations under the protocol. I hope I've clarified the question by the colleagues. Thank you very much. Madam Moderator, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you so much for such an insightful contribution, Mr. Lumu. So I see that there are 2 hands up in the attendee list. So I'd like to call on Malcolm Okoth to ask his question.
I think my question was asked, but I think I don't know if my hand is still up. I don't know.
All right. So is there any other question from the audience? Please indicate by putting your hand up. Right, Mr. Kalibala Philip, you may go ahead.
Thank you, colleagues, and as Secretariat for organizing this. I just want to just comment the presentation of Liz and Dr. I think Dr. Menatella from Egypt, especially so because these 2 presenters have touched the most the thing that I think we should be now talking about broadly, about markets and where our products would sell, because IP is not just abstract, it leads to products. And so I think the emphasis from these 2 ladies has been us giving ourselves a chance to develop ourselves as a market, and then to see to it that our products with their value can also gain traction within our own market. I think that's quite important, because me being an IP information disseminator, that have been around giving this IP information. We rarely, when we are discussing IP, we miss out on the IP so what, the so what question. Where does IP go from here? So we are going to create products, IP products, which are going to sit in our laps, and we shall never know what to do with them. Yet they have to lead into the market. So I'm so happy that Liz has touched this, and Dr. Manila has touched this. And me as a presenter, I think we can pick up from there and know that now we're asking the next question, that from IP, from creativity, then to what? Thank you so much. It was just a commendation and a recognition. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kalibala. Is there a particular speaker in which your question was directed at? Or are you leaving it open?
It was not a question. I was just actually re-emphasizing what these 2 speakers have emphasized, and I think it's an important stage we have reached as IP professionals, that we need to give direction to what we produce as products, to put emphasis on the markets of IP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry, please, let me step in at this point, ladies and gentlemen. What an awesome presentations from different parts of the continent that we've listened to. We're listening from the AFCF Secretariat, who happen to be our co-convener for this pre-summit. And we're excited about building up to the All-African IP Summit that will take place in Nairobi, Kenya this year. We have 2 more hands up. Maybe at this point, I should be able to invite Obina. Obina, can you hear me? And probably pose your question directly to any of the speakers that have made presentation. However, because of time constraint, I will just give you less than 1 minute. You can go straight to your point and ask your question, and they will then respond. Then I'll then follow up with some wrap-up conversation. This is a pre-summit, Ladies and gentlemen, we are really excited and looking forward to the 7th edition that will happen from 11th to the 13th November in Nairobi, Kenya. So, opener, you can unmute yourself, ask a question, just less than a minute. Then we can wrap up this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbakalu. I must commend all the speakers that have given us this insightful session. We really found it very, very, very insightful. I'll be very brief. I enjoyed the conversations around the integrated IP laws and the protocol, so pursuant to the Abuja Treaty. I give it as I think it was Dr. Lemon that actually tried elucidating, tried to break down how the treaty tends to IP laws. So my question be, will member states be required to amend the existing IP protocol, IP legislation that they have already, to comply with the protocol? That is, if this goes through, and are there mechanisms on ground, to resolve the cases of conflicts where the protocols would now will conflict with the existing or the local laws of each member state? I don't know if my question is clear enough.
Possibly, let me just summarize.
Okay.
There is already an existing infrastructure that is nationally focused, maybe take their bearing from the current existing intergovernmental IP system that Africa have. Now we have an AFCFT that is bringing everyone together. So I would allow him respond because Mr. Azari is still here to respond. So what they are saying is that would there be an issue of reform to align with the current state? But although he has made mention of it that it's going to be state party, and let me give him the floor to respond to this. And yes, possibly brief. Thank you. Mr. Zia, you can unmute now and just respond to he's asking, would there be a system of reform to align with the continental framework? Thank you very much.
Sorry. Mr. Desiree is saying from his end that he's unable to hear you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'll be very brief. If you can hear me now,
I can hear you, but since Mr. Desiree, technically, can you find out what is going on?
I cannot hear Mr. San. I cannot hear Mr. San. I have heard the question, but
okay, he heard the question.
Yes, please.
Okay.
But I cannot hear Mr. San.
Okay.
But I heard the question. The question, I think, if I may, if it's my turn to respond, I don't know. Madam Moderator, should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay. So, as again I said in responding to my friend Mutai, the protocol is a continental regime that member states have agreed on. It creates some obligation for the member state by establishing rules and principles for harmonization. So it tends to harmonize national legal framework on IPR to make sure that we have at the continental level more or less the same rules and principles. So this is an agreement made by the state parties. They have agreed to do so. It means they have put on themselves, they have accepted obligations to comply with the protocol. What it means now, practically speaking, is member state or state parties, as the jargon that we use, have to look into their national laws and see if there is a gap between their obligations in the protocol and what they have in their relevant national laws. We are also, as the Secretariat, going to undertake this exercise that we call gap analysis. It's part of what the process of implementation review. So we are confident that many of these regulations are already more or less in compliance with the protocol, at least something like 80 or 90%. But some gaps still have to be covered, specifically in some areas. When it comes to traditional knowledge, for instance, there is a lot to do. Establishing a national competent authority, many countries do not have this authority. They will have to establish it. Having national laws dealing with the disclosure requirements, they will have to do that, or they can simply use the protocol without having to develop a new obligation. So that's a way of doing. Otherwise, the gap will show where is something to address. If that's the case, there will be a requirement of alignment. There will be a requirement of alignment. I used an example where member state or state parties commit to protect all category of trademarks. Remember, in most of our national laws, only traditional marks are protected. Non-traditional are not yet included in some of them. So there is a shift that needs to be done there to be compliant with the protocol. And that exercise will therefore require that you look into your laws and see if that is there. You have to fill the gap. So that exercise needs to be undertaken. And same for the 8 annexes, so that at the end of the day, when a business operator want to operate under the AFCFTA, it's more or less certain that in terms of certainty, the requirements that he has under the protocol are more or less the same in the various countries. So that's it. So in some areas, the obligation is not, so there is a progressivity approach there, a phase-out approach. The level of harmonization has not been defined, but the principle of harmonization is there. It means what? For instance, in terms of remedies, you have to provide remedies in case of infringement. How far your remedies can go, this is up to you, but you need at this stage to provide them. So the depth of the harmonization has not been defined, but the principle has been agreed. I hope these ones also help the colleagues to understand that we are moving towards matching the objective to Abuja Treaty, but we are going there gradually. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Lumu. So we have time for just one final question before we move on to our closing announcements. And final question is from Mr. Malcolm Okuth. So he says, the summit asks whether Africa is owning the value, not just creating it. In your experience, where does the value actually leak out at creation, at licensing, or at enforcement? And which of those is most fixable in the next few years? I'm assuming this question is one, so whoever would like to answer it, please go ahead.
Sorry, where was the question? I was trying to find the question so that I reread it and then I can answer.
Okay, so the question is in the Q&A section from Malcolm Okuth.
So I'd say this, and I think I addressed this in my presentation. Where does the value actually leak? It's in the absence of legislation and policy that actually promotes branding and IP, like that ownership. It's promoting that it will be labeled made in Kenya. It's promoting that when it moves from the Kenyan market or domain, it will carry the artisan or the IP rights holder's brand name, as opposed to just manufacturing and then the exporting party on the other end either rebrands it or takes this local brand and registers it there. So the need for laws to be that precise, I think, in my view, would be important. And I say this because I have seen in the Kenyan context, for example, we are seeing, like with our export promotion agency, artisans or creatives will send products, but they have not labeled them. And then we see that even the agency is not really keen on even labeling made in Kenya. So you can see already from the artisan's perspective or the creative's perspective, they are invisible. Someone just says, oh, I source from Kenya, if you're lucky. Otherwise, they'll be like, yeah, it is inspired by African or Kenyan culture. You know, such broad terms, unfortunately. So I think in that regard, and then of course, when those mechanisms are in place, then better licensing infrastructure can be done. I think right now it's possible to achieve it, but at a smaller scale. But with the right government partners and the right technocrats in place, it is something that is achievable at a local or national level as we build towards a regional infrastructure. So that will even be the same with enforcement, because the enforcement needs an intellectual property right registered, and then you have some policing mechanism so that then now you can identify infringement and then enforce. Yeah, so that's how I would answer that question. I hope, Bankom, you are satisfied. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Lenjo, for answering that question. And unfortunately, we are out of time, and we are coming closer and closer to the end of today's pre-summit dialogue. So I kindly ask that, first of all, thank you for taking us through the presentations and for answering the questions. We really appreciate our distinguished speakers and our attendees for coming in today. Before we get to the end of the session, of course, we have to bring to your attention the 7th All Africa Intellectual Property Summit, which is taking place in Nairobi, Kenya from 11th to 13th November 2026. This year's summit promises to bring together policymakers, government leaders, IP offices, businesses, investors, creators, and so many other professionals across Africa and beyond to explore practical solutions that will enable Africa to create, trade, innovate, and most importantly, own the value generated from our ideas and innovations. So the discussions that we've had today is just the beginning of this conversation. We have so much more to bring to you all during the summit. And so beyond the rich conference sessions, delegates will enjoy extensive networking opportunities, exhibitions, and our prestigious All Africa IP Awards and Gala Nights, where we will celebrate individuals and organizations making exceptional contributions to the advancement of IP across the continent. So I'm also delighted to remind everyone that the early bird registration is currently open, and the standard registration fee is $400 United States dollars. But for a limited period of time, you can register at 50% off, making this the perfect opportunity to secure your place at a significantly reduced rate of $200. So we encourage you all to take advantage of this special offer before the early bird window closes on August 16th, 2026. I'd also like to tell you all that our call for paper submissions are now closed, and I would like to acknowledge everyone who submitted their papers for this year's summit. The notification emails have now been sent out to all applicants. We sincerely congratulate those whose papers were accepted following a rigorous review process. To register and learn more about this year's summits, including sponsorship opportunities, please visit our website at www.africaipsummits.com. We look forward to welcoming you all to Nairobi, Kenya this November as we continue building an Africa that not only creates and trades, but owns the value of its innovation. So I'd like to, pass the mic back to my lead moderator, Sarah, to continue and close up the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mali. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Today we've had it Stated plainly, intellectual property is not merely a legal right. It's an economic asset, it's a development tool, and it's a catalyst for a sustainable growth. We've had it in a story of a plant that was used by generations before anyone thought to protect it. We've had it in the cocoa that leaves our shores as raw material commodity and returns as a branded luxury. We've had it in the patent that cannot yet unlock alone. Different stories, one thread. Africa's future competitiveness depends not only on our ability to generate ideas, but on our collective will to own, protect, commercialize, and derive lasting value from them. We encourage you to stay connected with the All Africa Intellectual Property Summit through our website and social media platforms for updates and more activities to come, leading to the summit in Nairobi. On behalf of the committee, partners, and moderators, thank you for honoring us with your presence today. Africa creates, Africa trades, and now it is on all of us gathered here to make sure that Africa owns. Until Nairobi, asante sana, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I can see that more and more people are leaving, but I kindly ask that if you don't mind, please put on all your cameras so we can take a picture with everyone. So the people that are comfortable with putting their cameras on, please put it on and allow us to briefly take a photo. And we appreciate you holding on despite the 4 minutes delay. Thank you. So please, everyone, give us a smile as we take the picture. Okay, thank you very much. So now come to the end of today's session, and we wish you all an amazing evening and enjoy the rest of your day. We're closing into the end of the month, so also enjoy as we get closer and closer to the end of the month. Have an amazing day, and bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.